Welcome everyone to the Skills Workshop's 33rd Virtual Careers Fair. For those of you who've been here before and followed the programme since June, welcome back. To anyone joining for the first time, welcome. A quick reminder, the Skills Workshop was created to give you the skills, knowledge and insight you need to prepare for a career within asset management. In September and October, we're running 41 careers fairs featuring firms across the industry. All our workshops are free to register. The details are in the chat box. I'm Lucy Bond. I'm your host for tonight, and I'm joined by Kewe Ikoroje. We're both from Man Group. I'm the head of HR for the UK and EEA and have been at Man Group for coming up to 7 years now. Kewe, can I ask you to introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, so my name is Kewe and I am a quantitative researcher at Man AHL, but before that I was on the grad scheme, so I plan to give a little bit of insight into, I guess, that whole process today with you.
Thank you. And before we begin, a quick reminder, this is a webinar. We can't see and hear you, so please send us your questions via the Q&A function and we will try to get through as many of them as possible. So, Man Group today, our key facts. We have around 1,500 employees. Our main office is in the UK with mostly about 1,000 employees there. We then have other big offices in Pfaffikon, New York and Boston. We have some other offices in the US and then in APAC and across the globe, as you can see set out on the slide. We've got around 135 billion US dollars under management. If you ever hear any of our CEO, Luke Ellis's interviews or podcasts, you'll often hear him talk about why we come to work at Man Group. And that's to grow the wealth of our underlying clients, the teachers, the oil rig workers, the doctors, the firemen. So while our direct clients are the pension funds that look after that money, we never forget the individual savers and investors who are underneath those large institutions. Man Group has a trading history spanning more than 230 years. We were founded in 1783 as a sugar cooperage and broker by James Mann. The company was then based in Billingsgate and then locally, actually latterly down at Sugar Quay right on the river. So as the sugar would come up the river, it would be put from the barges onto Sugar Quay and traded. In 1784, Man won the contract to supply the Royal Navy with rum for the Sailors' Daily Rum Tot. That tradition continued for 180 years with Man Group as the supplier. During that time, the company expanded from sugar and rum to other commodities, including coffee and cocoa. And when financial exchanges came about, Man traded on these to hedge its commodities exposure. In 1869, the firm was renamed ED&F Man after James Mann's grandsons, Edward and Frederick. The firm listed on the London Stock Exchange in 1994, and then in 2000 divided into two separate businesses, with Man Group focused on financial services and ED&F Man as a commodities house. In 2007, MF Global, the brokerage business, demerged from Man Group, and that leaves us with Man Group as we know it today. We have 5 different investment engines. I'm not going to talk about Man AHL because Kewe will cover that one, but I will talk briefly about the others. So the second on the slide is Man Numeric, which is based out of the US. It's fundamentally a quantitative asset manager. It offers a number of products, mostly long only, very much dealing with equities, founded in 1989, and it came on board with us in Man Group in 2014. We then have Man GLG, which was actually founded in Lehman Brothers back in 1995. It came on board with Man Group in 2010. It's a discretionary investment manager, so people make the decisions in GLG, and it has a number of investment analysts as well as portfolio managers. Man FRM is an alternative investment specialist. So it offers a number of customized services, portfolio solutions, single managed accounts. It also is the entity that will provide guidance and advice to other hedge funds. It was founded in 1991 and acquired by Man in 2012. We then have Global Private Markets, which is our most recent business to come on board. Private markets specializes in unlisted real estate debt or private real estate equity, and public corporate debt. So none of these investments that they specialise in are listed on exchanges. They're private, not public investments. It was originally called Alto when it came on board, and now is part of our other debt products together, branded Man Global Private Markets. I'm going to talk briefly about our responsibility. So all of the businesses that I've covered in the previous slide have a responsible investment offering. For example, Man Global Private Markets, or GPM, has a community housing fund. We set out information on responsible investing on our website. Our corporate social responsibility is also set out there. That covers things like human rights, who we choose to partner with in business, our suppliers, diversity and inclusion. This is a key part of our business. Responsibility is one of Man Group's 6 principles. To talk briefly about diversity and inclusion specifically, we have 4 networks: BEAM, Black Employees and Allies at Man; WAM, Women at Man; Pride at Man; and FAM, Families at Man. We have 4 work streams: social mobility, disability, neurodiversity, and next gen. We have a partnership with the King's Maths School, where we go into the King's Maths School and give lectures and speeches, and then some of our employees mentor students at the King's Maths School, and some of those students come back to Man Group. We work with other initiatives like BWAM, Black Women in Asset Management, Encircle, the Diversity Project, and all of its various work streams, including the Talk About Black stream and the Race and Ethnicity stream. We've signed the Race at Work Charter. We've signed the Women in Finance Charter. We work with several external partners to source diverse talent like the Bright Network, SEO, Speakers for Schools, to name some. I'll also quickly mention our charitable trust. We all have an opportunity to work with our local communities and to spend 2 days volunteering, as well as getting involved in other work with our Man Charitable Trust charities. We also have a strong commitment to learning at Man Group. So the Oxford Man Institute opened in the summer of 2007. Has a vision to become the world's leading centre for research in quantitative finance. It has a research focus of machine learning and alternative investments, and it has a focus on ongoing collaborations with computer science, economics, mathematics, and statistics. That commitment to learning is echoed through our company. We have a talent department which sits alongside HR, and we all have the opportunity to develop and take courses as we want to. To summarise our early career programmes set out on the slide, but we've got 5 different graduate programmes. All have a 2-year duration, and they are rotational. So you go into different departments within the large departments. So investment management, you might, for example, rotate AHL, GLG, FRM. Kerry will talk more about that one. We've got a sales graduate programme, finance, operations and technology. We have an investment management summer internship, which lasts for 10 weeks, starts in June. We have an apprenticeship programme, which gives you a 12 to 24-month traineeship in one of our teams, opportunities across the business. I haven't spoken much about infrastructure, but across all of those investment engines, we have various departments like legal and compliance and talent and HR to look after all of those investment engines and the staff there. And then we have a Man Group Insight programme as well, which provides insights into what we do across the firm. Some of those are in the investment engines, and we also last year started an insight programme for infrastructure, which spans the whole firm. Kewei, I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, so as I already introduced myself, my name is Kewei, and I work as a quant at Man AHL. And I just wanted to, I guess, give a little bit of a background as to, I guess, how I ended up here, kind of going through the grad scheme, being in, I guess, a similar position to many of you. So kind of being in university and just trying to get to know a little bit more about the industry. So I went to Warwick and I studied maths. And then in the summer of my first year of university, I saw everyone else would seem to be rushing around to do spring weeks and the like. So I felt like I had to kind of get on, I guess, I felt like you have to kind of get on the job hunt a little bit early. And so I was introduced to a company called SEO, which Lucy mentioned is one of Man Group's partner firms. And it's a charity that essentially helps people from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds to gain access to industries that traditionally also haven't had much presence of these people from these sorts of demographics. So so they set up something called the SEO Academy. I'm not sure if that still is running, but I did that back in 2016 summer. And it's essentially, I guess, what the skills workshop is trying to do, but condensed into a week and a bit more focused on the investment banking side. But because quite a few investment banks also have investment management arms, there was a section on investment management. And I would say that's where my interest really started. So I did that in summer of 2016. And then I was introduced to Man Group through SEO. I did the application process, and I was able to, luckily enough, get an internship. So I interned in Man AHL, so the quantitative part of the business that Lucy mentioned earlier, and in particular in the risk team. And I list a couple of the projects that I did there, but I feel the reason why I'm really highlighting those is that before I joined my team, I didn't know how to do any of these things. If I'm being honest, I barely knew what any of these projects really were or really meant. But I think why it's kind of important to kind of mention that is I think a lot of the time it feels like this industry can be quite inaccessible because, you know, there's so much finance jargon, and there's it's been quite difficult to see what the route into the industry is. But I think the fact that, you know, I started not knowing anything and I was able to do those projects over that 10 weeks kind of shows that there are companies who are here to support you and kind of growing your experience and your knowledge. So I did that, and I was lucky enough to convert onto the graduate scheme afterwards. I put an obligatory graduation photo here to show that I went back to university for my third year and then came back the next year. So sorry, Lisa, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So so this is a timeline of what my graduate scheme looks like. And I feel like maybe here what I should probably mention is that I think what's quite special, at least when I was applying for graduate schemes, about the Man Group graduate scheme is that you really, if you're interested in investment management, you really get to try all styles. And I think that's quite difficult to do it in the same place and to get exposure and to actually get exposure to in the same place in a way that feels like more of a learning environment rather than you're expected immediately to be a value add. So I came back in September of 2018. I did my first rotation in AHL risk, so the team that I interned in, and I essentially kind of did the same thing, but my responsibilities were extended, and I had a longer risk research project to deliver on, as well as present on at the end of the graduate scheme. Sorry, at the end of that rotation. And then I moved into Man FRM and Man Solutions. And as Lucy already touched on, they help clients with essentially how should they go about picking their hedge fund allocations, basically, or their alternatives allocations. And I did quite a big range of work here. So I worked with operational risk teams. So operational risk is I guess separate from all the risks are separate from the actual investment management process. So think risks around people, risks around internal processes, that sort of thing. I also built some portfolio analytics tools, and I went to manager meetings where I met different hedge funds, and they explained their investment strategies. So I did that for 6 months, and then I think at this point in the grad scheme, I was pretty sure that I was a little bit more interested in the quant side. So I had a quant-like first rotation. My second rotation, I had to do a lot of coding to build these portfolio and analytics tools. But I think when you have the opportunity to try out all styles, you might as well, to make sure that you're kind of sure in that decision. I think it's very easy to think that you understand how a lot of these businesses function and what they do, but I don't think you really know until you're there and you're really doing the work. So I did a rotation in Man GLG in a long-only European equity book, and it was essentially kind of the opposite side of the spectrum to where I planned to really situate myself from a career perspective at that point. And I think why I think why I found that whole experience so valuable is that as a quant, you do kind of need to understand how the other side of the street kind of thinks. And I think you also need to be able to say that, okay, I tried everything and I now know that case, this is what I'm actually interested in. And I feel like I was even quite surprised because I think I hesitated a little bit at the end of that rotation in terms of where I wanted to end up because I enjoyed it so much. And then my last rotation is where I currently am now. So I'm a researcher in alternative markets in AHL. And here I build and implement trading strategies that trade in alternative markets, or you might hear them being called exotic markets. And then, sorry, do you mind just doing some clicking for me, Lucy? Sorry, I should have realized that I wouldn't be doing the slides myself. So, yeah, I think, is that, yeah. Sorry. So I just wanted to highlight, so can we just go back one slide, Lucy, sorry. So I put all of these projects here to kind of highlight the wide range of work I did whilst I was on the grad scheme to kind of show how much exposure I was able to get over those 2 years. And I just think it's important to highlight that I think on a grad scheme, what you really want to do is try to get as much exposure to different types of investment management, different roles that are available in investment management as possible. And these are all things that I learned how to do, and I've been able to take those skills onwards into my permanent role. So, sorry, next slide now, please. As I've kind of already touched on, I work in AHL, the quantitative part of the business. So this essentially means that we code up algorithms. So an algorithm is essentially a predefined set of rules which determines how we go about trading markets and when we want to trade these markets. AHL manages around 50 billion in assets, and really we're a group of mathematicians, statisticians, computer scientists. There is quite a lot of, I guess, a bit of a mathematical slant, even a lot of mathematical slant to what we do. And as we've kind of already mentioned, it's part of the broader Man Group group of businesses. And yeah, I think that's probably all for that slide. Sorry, next slide, Lucy. So just kind of quickly highlighting what really is a hedge fund. So Lucy already touched on this a little bit earlier, but we get given essentially a pool of money or a certain allocation of a client's allocation, and we invest that to help them achieve their investment objectives. And we tend to have, I guess, more institutional clients. So these are clients which tend to be big organizations, quite sophisticated, and they need us to help them with maintaining the value of their assets, or to help them meet some sort of return, relative or absolute return objective. So you see, I put a couple here: pension funds, university endowments, sovereign wealth funds. And I put the last point on the slide really just to highlight, I think, what's quite interesting about AHL in particular, and I think it's that we really have quite a strength in trading small, illiquid, interesting markets. So I highlight cheese there. I think we do trade a couple of cheese contracts. We trade, I put wine here, but that really is ethanol, but I think that's the best way to describe it. We trade mortgages, we trade Bitcoin, loads of different markets, hundreds of markets. And I think that's what keeps the work interesting and varied. Sorry, next slide, Lucy, please. So I already mentioned a little bit earlier that really quantitative investing, so systematic investing and discretionary investing, it's kind of two sides of the same coin. So on one side you have quant, where your investing is quite rules-based, where on the other side you have discretionary, where humans are really the ones making decisions. And we have both of those under the same house in the form of Man AHL and Man GLG. The next slide, please. So I just summarized what I think the key differences and similarities are between these two investing processes. So I think in terms of coming up with trading ideas, I think this is probably where they are the most similar. So people base where they get their trading ideas on, I don't know, trading experience, or from academia, or from expert knowledge, and that sort of thing. And I think that's where it's probably the most similar. And then when I think where the key differences really come is when we're putting this idea into action. So for example, when we're actually defining a trading idea on the quant side, we're building a model based on usually historical data. And we use that to essentially code up a set of rules as to how we want to trade a market and when we should be trading the market. Whereas on the discretionary side, we're actually more looking at, I guess more qualitative factors that would be difficult for a quant model to capture. So for example, let's say I want to decide whether I want to invest in a particular stock, then I would, then maybe I want to go and speak to the management, and part of my decision might be influenced by how confident I think management is for that company. That I think is a little bit difficult to put into a quant model. And then testing the idea can be quite different. Also, how we actually use the trading idea. So for example, essentially the computer tells us when to trade rather than manually putting in the trades ourselves, like on the discretionary side. And then on the rules of trading, I think that's also another key difference. Once we've built our models, apart from maybe refitting them, we don't necessarily really want to be updating them after that. We want to trust that our models are robust to different market environments, and that they work on their own. But I think on the discretionary side, it's when the idea changes or your conviction changes. So for example, on that CEO idea, maybe the management changes in that company, and I might want to reduce my position or to turn short based on that change in the company's details. Next slide, please, Lucy. So this is just I guess a quick thought experiment to kind of, I guess, understand why I guess quant investing works. So Veronique has very kindly helped us put together a poll, and if you can just answer, and I'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, I think we can probably close that now, Veronique, if that's okay. Oh, okay, interesting. So can you tap once, Lucy?
Sorry.
Yeah. So there are actually 3 times more words with the letter K in the third position than words that begin with K. And actually the results were closer than I expected them to be. But I guess on average, everybody got that. On average, people got that right. And why I highlight this, so one more click, Lucy, please, is that it highlights a particular cognitive bias that humans have. So this one in particular is called availability bias. So humans tend to judge situations and judge the likelihood of situations based on how easily they find it to recall certain examples, essentially. And how this translates into investing is that, for example, so this is a plot of the FTSE 100 over I think between 2005 and 2019 at some point. And you see that there are multiple big drawdowns, so big losses that you can get in the stock market. But people actually tend to over and underestimate what the risk of these tail events are. So these sharp sell-offs are because they tend to base it on how easily they can recall that these events happened. And this is one of several cognitive biases that really exist in the market and essentially leak into the investment decisions of humans. And what I guess on the quant side we try to do is we try to identify what patterns that these cognitive biases create. We try to code up models that capture that, and we, fingers crossed, profit from doing that. So I just thought that was a quick and easy example of how we tend to think about things on the quant side. But yes, so that's all I really had planned to say. I'll pass back to Lucy to touch on questions.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks, Kerry, well done. So interesting. Right, we've got plenty of questions. Okay, off we go.
Oh yes, a lot of questions. Okay.
Sorry, I've just managed to lose my chat box, which was telling me the questions. Here we go. What is the work-life balance like and the typical hours you work, particularly for junior employees? Kerry, do you want to take that? What time do you come to work?
What time do I come to work? Depends on meetings. Let me not dog myself in here. I'm joking. So I think usually I'm in the office between 8:30. I try to leave between 6:30, 7, but I might stay a little bit later than that, mainly because I'm somebody who works a lot better in the evening. So especially with research, where you kind of really want a good chunk of time where you're able to focus. I quite like using the evening hours when everybody's kind of gone home. It's a little bit quieter, try and mash out some work. But really, it kind of depends on investment engine and what your role kind of requires, right? So, for example, in GLG, people tend to be in a little bit earlier because they need to be in for when markets open, so that they can trade accordingly and that sort of thing. So it really kind of depends on what part of the business that you're in.
Good. I'll answer this one. Are there client-facing roles for junior employees? Yes, absolutely. We would never chuck anybody in at the deep end. You might be accompanied, but yes, our junior employees have direct relationships and contact with our clients. The investment management graduate analyst program is closed for applications until next September. We are reworking it. We have been doing bits virtually. We're now back in the office in person, but keep an eye on our website for more information. The grad scheme is not the only entry into Man Group as a postgraduate student. So whilst we do have lots of people come on the graduate scheme, we also hire a lot of graduates into the business directly. You can always reach out to our Resource Solutions department and have a look at the roles on our website and apply directly for those who welcome any direct applicants for all of our roles. Are the graduate programs available for early professionals specifically interested in the AHL team? Can we?
Yeah, so I do, even though it is called a grad scheme, I do think we also take people who are 1 to 2 years into their careers. I don't know if there's an upper cap on that, I'm sorry, but a few years into your career, I think it's still okay to apply for the graduate scheme. And being interested in AHL in particular, I don't know how this works with the new rework. I think this probably will stay, but we kind of have different streams on the grad scheme. So once you've been given an offer, you're usually allowed to say whether you have a preference for the quant side or the discretionary side, or you want to maybe stay, kind of do something similar to what I did and kind of stay a bit more like a generalist. And you're able to pick your rotations accordingly to that. So definitely available for early professionals, and definitely available if you want to have a bit more insight to what AHL does.
Cool. Now, to each of us, Kelly, what keeps you at Man? What do you enjoy about your role? Do you want to go first?
So I've really only ever worked at Man, so it's hard to do any also comparisons to anywhere else. But I think this sounds like the generic answer, but really it's the people. So I feel like I've been very lucky in a lot of the people that I've met here. I've met here, especially people who are more senior, who have taken a real interest in my career and my development. And I think that can be a little bit more difficult in larger companies, and even in smaller companies. I think that's something that Man does really well in terms of actually trying to keep the structure as flat as possible and keep senior management as accessible as possible. So I think I was sitting near the chairman of AHL during my internship, for example, and I remember thinking this must be a mistake, but by the end, we were quite friendly. So I think that's probably one of the main things. And then on my role, I think what I quite like is, so as I said already, I specialize in alternative markets. And I quite like that a lot of the time these are markets that don't traditionally, or at least already have a big quant presence. So we're trying to do something new, something a little bit different to what's being done already, which tends to be on the discretionary side. So a lot of the time I'm having to come up with my own ideas. I'm having to be quite creative rather than implementing something that maybe somebody's already done before. So I quite like that. And also I quite like a challenge as well. How about you, Lucy?
So I have worked at a few different places because I'm much older than you, and I started off as an investigator on what was then the London International Financial Futures and Options Exchange, and then I have worked in regulation, I've worked in financial crime, I've worked in US investment banks, and now I'm here at Man. And I'm here at Man because someone asked me to come and join here, and I do really enjoy it. So I like the size. I like the fact that as we walk around, we know most people and we can say hello to each other, which I really like. I've worked at firms that have got like 5,000 employees, and that works there too as well. It's just a bit different. As I said, I really like the commitment to learning. So, we come from a variety of different backgrounds. Kewe is good at maths. I'm not particularly good at maths, but we have some people who are GLG, investment managers who might have done English literature as a degree. So you can go around the place and you can have various conversations with people about their subject matter expertise, which I find fascinating. It is a very flat structure. There is tremendous access to senior management. You will often be in the lift with Luke, our CEO, or Mark, our deputy CEO, or Antoine, our CFO, and they will just chat to you. It is, a lovely, lovely place to work, and I like the fact that we're challenged. To your point, Kewe, as well, on a daily basis. Actually, the variety of what we do is huge, and I do really enjoy that.
And also just quickly on the grad scheme, because I think this is an interesting point on the grad scheme, is that we do try to pair people up with senior mentors or with mentors across the firm. So that's already something that we do internally, but we also do especially for the grad scheme as well. So Antoine actually was my mentor during my internship and my grad scheme. So you get a lot of access.
He's a good friend to have.
Yeah.
Do we provide visas for international students? Yes, we do. We find the right people to bring onto our programs, and then we wrap whatever they need around them. So yes, that's a possibility. Are we part of any veteran schemes? No, not at the moment, but actually that is something I'm working on. So if you have information, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to hear from you and hear your ideas. Okay, well, this might be one for you. Do you use the same pricing models that you use for other instruments and apply them for Bitcoin? Do you know that?
See, you have to be a bit careful of IP, right? So you want to be a little bit careful there.
True.
But I think, I think the most I can really say there is that we do trade Bitcoin, and I don't know if I can really go into what models we actually use. I'm going to stay on the conservative side on that one.
That's wise, very wise. Bit easier. What tips would you give to young people joining the industry?
Tips. I think sometimes I think there's a bit too much of a focus on I need to get as many internships as possible. I think that can be a little bit difficult. So if you can just go to Insight, like Insight days are just as great, and do show your commitment. I think also, on the buy side versus the sell side, I think you tend to see that you don't tend to see as many young professionals as you might see on the sell side, and I think sometimes you can feel a bit intimidated, or you might feel like, oh, how do I build rapport? And I would say that's the one thing I would say, is that you shouldn't let that hold you back in terms of building relationships with colleagues. I think being a young person at Man has been actually pretty seamless, pretty fine. I think I'm able to get along with with everyone, and I think that's probably something that I think young people are a little bit kind of nervous about when entering in an industry where you see people are on the sell side for 5 years and they move over, but entering as somebody who's a graduate, that might feel a little bit daunting. So I'd say that's probably one of the key tips. Yeah.
Good advice. Would you work on the algorithm at all during the graduate role? And do you need to know any programming languages to make the most out of the graduate role?
Yeah, so I was in AHL for 6 months before I rolled off, and I was able to code up a predictor. It did not pass out of sample, so it's not trading right now. But I was allowed to do that. If that passed, that would have been put into whichever trading strategy or that sort of thing. So you definitely do get the access to be able to do that. In terms of programming languages, I think for AHL, obviously, you do need to know coding languages. We mainly almost always use Python, but I think I wouldn't, if you were on the grad scheme, I wouldn't let that stop you from wanting to. Rotate in AHL. So Man Group has like developer courses and that sort of thing. So if you wanted to get up to scratch with a coding language and you hadn't really had an exposure to that before, I think Man Group does provide the support for you to do that. So you can try what the quant side is like for you. And then level of knowledge. Yeah, I want to say I had almost none, but I kind of had almost none when I was first joining. I think I feel like I can speak to the internship process a little bit, in that I think what they kind of want to test really is thinking process. Like, how do you look at problems? How do you solve problems? I think that's something that is a little bit more difficult to teach versus industry knowledge. Industry knowledge, I think, is very teachable and just comes with time. And I don't think we have too high. We expect too much, at least on the intern side anyway. I couldn't speak too much about the graduate process.
I mean, we generally find that people coming to apply to us have got a good knowledge of the industry because that's where they want to work and they're interested in it.
Yeah, that's true.
But by no means do you have to know everything about it. Like, we know that you're coming as a junior employee and you'll have, you won't know how to solve the world.
Yeah,
that's what we're here to teach you.
Expectations are set accordingly. Exactly. Yeah.
This is an interesting one. I'll take this one, Kerry. How do you implement backtesting, considering the past might not be a reflection of the future? Past performance is never an indication of future results.
Yes, that's on every slide.
Yeah, we and every other firm in the industry backtests new solutions that we might launch based on empirical hard data. But that's never, ever an indication of what might be achieved in the future.
Yeah.
Kerry, I hope your day is going well, from Samuel. Question, what do you enjoy most about your role? What advice would you give to someone interested in a quant role?
I think I've mentioned a little bit already what I enjoy about my role, but I think advice, I would say, I think it's hard because even so, I work in a quant fund, but quant funds are very different and very across the industry, and they all trade different assets and all trade in different ways and all research in different ways. So it's hard to really give very good blanket advice, but I think if you're interested in a quant role, I think coding is definitely a requirement. I really had to scrub up on mine just before I started my internship, for example. So I think that's really important. I think also just having a good grasp of basic statistics, right? I think those are the two things you really want to be able to bring out pretty easily. But if you kind of want to get a better idea of kind of what I guess a quant role looks like, I think Quantopian closed down, but they have I think they still have YouTube videos, and you can kind of see some of the you can read some of the articles about how they look at risk management and portfolio management and that sort of thing. But there are quite a few resources online, so I would say really try to exploit those as much as possible.
We have one here. Do we have fun in our roles? I think it's clear that we have fun in our roles.
Yeah.
We enjoy it. We enjoy our days. What's been the highlights of your time at Man in each of your roles? That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think while you think, so one of the highlights for me, because whilst I've been at Man Group, I haven't just had one job. So I have worked in our financial crime department as head of compliance due diligence. I've worked as head of compliance for sales and marketing, and I've worked in the chief of staff office, and now I'm in the HR department. The highlight for me has probably been, and this is something that runs through the firm, each time someone has tapped me on the shoulder and said to me, you know, Lucy, I think you need to move now. I've got this new role and you're the person for it. I want you to take it on. And in each of those, I haven't necessarily had all of the qualifications or years of experience. They're for quite different roles. But Man Group is a company where we will look at you and look at what you're brilliant at and what you want to do. What do you have an aptitude for? And that's why the graduate program is great in the rotations, because you might have a very good idea of what you want to do. And then once you experience something else, you might think, actually, I quite enjoy that. And things change. And the firm is small enough and adaptable enough to be able to give you those opportunities.
That's actually quite interesting that you say that, because I remember I wasn't really sure that I really wanted to be at AHL at first, because I thought it felt kind of beyond me. I felt like it was beyond my capabilities essentially. And then I joined, and now I'm here 3 years later somehow. So when you say that, I actually really resonate with that. And I think for me, I think it's hard to really kind of get one straight away. If I had time, I feel like I'd have quite a few, but I think the one that kind of comes to mind first is when my first predicted, so my first trading strategy passed out of sample. So it's now trading client money. I found that quite exciting personally, just because you can now kind of see kind of the P&L impact of a piece of work that you did. And research can be quite mean in terms of how many predictions kind of pass out of sample. So that was very, very satisfying.
I'd be really chuffed, Koe, if that was me. Really chuffed. We do, so I'm going to just rattle through some of these.
Mm-hmm.
We do provide work experience internships. We have a variety of different ones. Sorry, it says through to experienced hires. Yes, that was one of the slides I covered. The investment management summer internship offers you the opportunity to gain hands-on experience in one of our investment management teams. And benefit from the opportunity to be considered for a place on our graduate analyst program. And actually, a lot of our interns do go through to one of the graduate programs, which I know was another question. Can we walk through the summer internship application? That will be laid out on our website. Keep an eye out there. How important is ESG to your clients? And do you think this is growing in importance to your clients? Yes, definitely. It's growing in importance across the entire industry, actually. So we have our responsible investment brochure on our website, which sets out our approach to responsible investment. And there are lots of our products that twin with our responsible investment strategy. We have a responsible investing committee as well. All that information is in the responsible investment brochure on the website and on the responsible investment page on the website as well. More broadly, corporate social responsibility as well just runs through our ethos really in our day-to-day operations. So doing the right thing is one of our cornerstones, echoed in our 6 principles as well. You know, we have lots of different initiatives, lots of different partners, and our employees are involved in lots of different responsible initiatives. Happy to touch on any of those more in detail. If you want to know, please put it into the chat box. Kerry, do you want to add anything on ESG or?
Yeah, to be honest, I think you covered it. Basically, if you're not interested in it, I think it's hard to get clients really interested unless you're really serious about ESG, applying it from a firm perspective as well as from an investing perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. Hedge funds have a reputation for being cutthroat. Is this true in your opinion? And how much does the culture at Man Group agree with this? You know, I mean,
do we come across as cutthroat, Lucy?
No, I don't think so. But what we are is on a quest for excellence. So, you know, we don't sit around twiddling our thumbs. People who work at Man Group are interested. They are passionate about what we do. It's not cutthroat, but people tend to be very, very good at what they do. We have, you know, billions of dollars of end investors under our responsibility to come here to work at Man Group, or actually to work anywhere that serves clients in that way. You have to be interested in being very good at what you do, to be better every day, and to give back to the organisation as well, and make this a good place to work for everyone.
Yeah. I don't think I would describe Man Group as cutthroat. It kind of made me laugh a little bit when I read cutthroat. I think the thing is that I think obviously I think the hedge fund industry gets a bit of a bad rap, right, in terms because of like movies and what it seems to look like from the outside. And I think this is why sessions like this are so important, to kind of make things feel a bit more realistic. And really, I guess again, I've only worked at Man Group, so I can really only speak for Man Group, but I've never felt like there's been a cutthroat environment in terms of people being competitive and that sort of thing. I think even actually what AHL is known for from a culture perspective is being extremely collaborative. So you'll see quant funds which can be quite segmented, separate teams, like quite very separate teams basically. But I think AHL were actually very much encouraged for cross-team collaboration and that sort of thing. And I don't think that sort of this way of operating would thrive very well in cutthroat sort of culture. But as Lucy said, we do want to strive for excellence and to be the best. And I think that's really kind of shown in our values, right? So we're a meritocracy. At the end of the day, we reward excellence. Yeah,
absolutely. That was a very good way of putting it. Are there any specific requirements for the quantitative research roles? Will Man only interview candidates with specific mathematics or computer science degrees, or does relevant work experience also count?
Sorry.
No, you don't have to have those particular degrees. It does help, obviously, to have a background, but we do have people who might, for example, have a bachelor's degree in one subject and then have a master's degree in something more quantitative. And we do have people in other parts of our businesses who've got different degrees, law, for example, English, etc. But you do have to have the skills appropriate for the role. And that's, I suppose, that then manifests itself in most people coming from a background with a degree in computer science, mathematics, etc.
Yeah, because every day you're doing some maths, every day you're doing some sort of coding. So I think it's a lot easier to settle into a role like that when you already have some experience doing that. So this is not me saying that you need it, but I think it would serve you well to have that experience before applying for a role like that, which had such a heavy reliance on those sorts of skills.
Absolutely. There are some questions on the summer internship. So postgraduates being eligible, give it a try. Why not?
Yeah.
Don't turn away applications.
Yeah, I feel like at the assessment centre there was definitely people who were doing postgrad, so masters and that sort of thing. And there are a couple of people who are in my cohort in the grad scheme who had masters and CFA qualifications and that sort of thing. So definitely, I think it is available for postgrads.
Yeah. I think we've covered more or less everything. We've got what program allows you to rotate into AHL?
And that would be the investment management graduate. That would be the investment management grad scheme. I don't think the other ones would probably, if you're actually interested in the investing side, so the research side, then it would be investment management. But obviously, all the other ones do touch AHL in a certain sort of way, right? So sales would work with AHL portfolio managers and selling funds and that sort of thing. So you kind of touch AHL everywhere, but it's, if you're talking about an investment research, then that would be the investment management grad scheme.
And then just to touch on these last two, is it possible for a non-STEM, i.e. pure finance student to work at AHL if you've got an aptitude for coding?
Yes, if you have an aptitude for coding, yeah. And also that's what the grad scheme is for, right? Come and try and see if you can.
Absolutely. And then it says, since the grad scheme's not available at the moment, are there any other vacancies available for last year master's students? Please have a look at our career opportunities on the website. We welcome direct applications. Yeah. Please just look at the roles. It's set out on the careers website. There's a whole list there, and you can tap into the ones that seem interesting to you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, here we go. I'm very interested in working for Man Group. However, I am a master's student at King's College studying international financial law. What's the best way or route to work for the company as a law student coming to work for the company's legal team? I would advise you actually to apply for the Infrastructure Insights program, which we are going to run in February, which will give you a brief overview of the law departments. We sometimes take graduates into, i.e. non-qualified lawyers, into the legal team. So it's not a never, but most of the people that we hire into legal are qualified lawyers already. Okay, I think that is everything. So Kewe, the last thing for us, right, is a question which is, can you tell us what you wanted to be when you were growing up?
That's really hard. I don't think I really remember. I feel like, when I was growing up, I definitely didn't imagine myself here. I feel like that's the first thing that I have to make quite clear. I feel like I was super bossy when I was young. So I just wanted to be like a manager or something. I feel like I've calmed down and I've tamed myself a little bit now. But back then, I think that's probably what I wanted to do. I like the idea of managing people. I think that was me. Exposing myself a little bit here.
Fine. And I suppose similarly, Kewe, I was also very bossy and thought I would be a dance teacher. Frankly, I never thought I'd end up in the world of finance or the city. And so in a way, we have both fallen into this.
Yes, definitely.
And that is through a chance application from my point of view, and for you, the SEO Academy. So the other option, as people ask about coming onto the graduate program or Insights, is to use those partnerships that firms like use to make sure that they've got a great pipeline of talent. So SEO, Speakers for Schools, the Bright Network can give you a tremendous amount of hints and tips on applying. Anything else, Kewe? Any last minute nuggets?
Any last minute nuggets? I feel like I should prep some last minute nuggets. But this is where I messed up. But
keep going, just keep going, keep trying.
I think what I probably would say is like, I feel like I said this a little bit earlier, but I just want to really like highlight, don't let the industry's kind of mystique, like the fact that it's quite difficult to understand, what people are talking about in terms of stocks and bonds and that sort of thing. And the fact that, traditionally it has felt very kind of, white, male dominated or that sort of thing, stop you from really trying to enter the industry if you really genuinely have an interest. I think it's a great time to really be joining the industry now. We're doing so many interesting things, like ESG. The market environments are changing in ways that they haven't in decades. There's so many interesting things going on at the moment. And I wouldn't want anyone to really stop themselves from wanting to apply just because, they feel maybe a little bit intimidated. Like I have to admit I did when they kind of see these companies. So I think that would be my last nugget.
That's good advice. Very good advice. Thank you. Okay, we're coming to the end now. We hope you all enjoyed getting to know about Man Group and it was useful. Don't forget, please keep taking a look at the careers page on our website, which is man.com/aboutus/careers. Many people have been asking about recordings. All of these sessions are recorded and added onto the Skills Workshop website after the session. So do go back and have a look. Don't forget, you can still register for all of the upcoming sessions. There are only 8 more firms to go. We'll see you tomorrow for Rachel Green and the team from Nuveen, which is a surprisingly large asset manager. They manage over 1.2 trillion of clients' assets across alternatives like real estate, farmland, timber, and private debt. Curious? You should be. Join us tomorrow to find out more, which is definitely something different. We're at time. All that's left to do is to say a big thank you to Kewe for joining us. Please connect with the Skills Workshop on LinkedIn, send us emails and follow us for the latest updates. We are here to help. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time.
See you.